completely would actually make it safer for the workers. In June, Northern Ireland is going to introduce a new law which makes buying sex illegal, effectively making the purchaser of sex a criminal. So let's start by talking to the escort who is looking to single-handedly revoke this law. Laura Lee, it's you. Why is it so important to decriminalise, to legalise, to change the current situation?
Because at the moment, sex work is the only occupation in the UK which compels me as a woman to work on my own. And it sends out a message to would-be attackers that we are sitting ducks awaiting violent assault. And in fact, since the 1990, 149 sex workers have been murdered.
Why would you, as an escort, as a sex worker, why would you feel safer if the law was different?
Because you wouldn't ask an accident and emergency nurse to do a Friday night shift on her own, so don't ask me. I deserve the right to work in safety, and I deserve labour rights like any other profession as well.
So if it was legal, you would be able to, what, have security with you or something like that?
Just two women working together in an apartment, just keeping each other safe.
Which is illegal at the moment?
Yes, it is.
What brought you into this line of work, Laura?
I was going through university the first time round, and I didn't want to leave up to my neck in debt, so I chose to work part-time as a sex worker, and it's just something that's always called me back. Really?
I mean, there are, I don't need to tell you, plenty of other jobs you could have done. It's not the most obvious career option at that age, is it?
I guess not, but I'm inherently lazy, so I didn't want to do 3 or 4 nights in a pub or a restaurant.
That's not going to be very good for business, admitting to being inherently lazy. I don't think.
Well, I'm not lazy in the bedroom.
Well, yes, OK. I suppose I asked for that. Julie, I notice you're not laughing at all.
Oh, no, I am laughing.
Inwardly?
Yes.
And now outwardly. What do you sort of think of the idea that prostitution should be made easier so that people like Laura Lee are safer?
What I think criminalisation of the entire sex industry would mean, however, is not just decriminalising those who are selling sex, which we should all want, but it would mean decriminalising pimping and brothel owning. It would mean decriminalising those landlords who are renting rooms in apartments to women and, in fact, are taking up to 90% of their earnings. And it would also decriminalise those who are wishing to profit and exploit women and make it a much safer environment for the punters and for the pimps, not necessarily for the women. Now, we can look at legalised and decriminalised regimes that have been totally failed social experiments, around the world, where trafficking of women into those countries where the police take a back seat because it's no longer a crime has increased, where the demand has increased because men are given the message that there's absolutely nothing wrong with buying and selling women's bodies.
I understand the point you're making. Where's Rebecca? Yeah. Rebecca, you take an altogether sort of firmer view on the whole issue.
I think it's quite sad, really. Girls that are the same age as us, we're students, we sort of have normal jobs. We don't have to go and do that. Some girls don't have a choice. I get that. But it's sad that other people are sort of taking advantage of them to benefit themselves, to earn their money, and they don't think of the sort of long-term consequences on other girls that that's going to have that don't sort of have a choice other than that.
It is all about choice, I suppose. Helen Wood, you're one of the country's best-known escorts, and I suppose as a result of that, I can predict what your thoughts are on this. What needs to change?
I think, I mean, I don't want it to be banned. I don't think it should. Well, obviously it's already illegal, but I think it should be. I think you should be able to go and be an escort if that's what you want to do.
Is it what anybody actually wants to do? I know Laura said it was,
yeah,
you say it is, but a lot of people will find it hard to imagine waking up in the morning and going, I know what I want to be.
In my case, no, it wasn't really something that I wanted to do. I can't blame anybody else for why I did it. I just chose to do it because I felt at the time that was my only option. I was a lot younger then, and I would do things different.
It was never your only option,
No, I've never said that. I've never said it was my only option. At the time, I felt backed into a corner, and I felt like it was an easy get out. Now, a lot of people say, how is that easy? It seemed like the easiest thing to do. It was the quietest thing to do. I was too proud to go and ask to lend money. It was a quick get out.
But you're not in that situation now.
Well, no, I'm not in the situation now, but a lot of things developed in a short space of time. I lost my job, I had rent to pay, and what seemed like at the time, I owed £1,500, I needed £1,500 within 3 days. Now, that to me now wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't have been a problem just a few years ago, but at 21, 22, it was like, oh my God, that seemed like £1 million to me.
Well, it still does to some of us. Where's Rachel? Hang on just 1 second. I just want to hear from Rachel first. That's pretty good money. It's a pretty good rationale for making making these decisions?
The point is, choice, it is your choice, but if you're educated enough to know that... Because obviously you're saying if we decriminalise it, you're saying to children at the age of 7 that it's OK to be a prostitute. And if a child turned around to me...
Who's saying that's for a child at 7?
Well, that's what they're going to be... It's a job, isn't it? Then it's classed as a job like it is being a lawyer, solicitor. If a child said to me, I want to be a prostitute because it's legal, that's what you're trying to say, it's decriminalised. So. You're saying that's
Do you think that is the message? They see Helen...
to that at 7, that's absolute rubbish.
No one's suggesting that a 7-year-old would be...
Why is a child being exposed to that at 7 years old in the first place?
If you're going to put it out there as decriminalised, if you think it's wrong, a child says that's wrong, isn't it? Because children are, you know, look what they're exposed to every day on the media. Look at this TV programme, we're discussing it now. Who's saying they're not going to watch that tomorrow and think, you know what, I want to do that
Rachel, it's all about choice, though, isn't it? And you are seeking to take away the choices of ladies like this to do what they want with their own bodies.
The reason I don't agree is that I want you to be safe, and I think that, OK, you're saying that you're going to be safe in numbers, but whereas you don't know about the uncontrollables that are surrounding prostitution. There are always going to be that illegal side of something, and there are those men out there that aren't going to be controllable, and you're not going to be safe.
So you're worried that it would become more acceptable?
Yeah.
But rather than looking just only at the choice or the lack of choice for the women, why don't we look at the law that Laura Lee is fighting, which is to criminalise the men who have the most choice? Men don't actually need to go and pay for sex. It's not a human right. Nothing will happen to
some men, I suppose, would say they have no choice, Julie.
But
Christine Hamilton, I want to bring you in at this point.
They have the choice, and the women have the least choice.
Prostitution. I mean, clearly there's a lot of disagreement about what should and should not happen. What would you like to see the British law do?
People can take a moral view about it, and that's, to me, on this programme, that's a slightly separate issue. I don't have a problem with it, and 2 people that I am proud to count as friends are former prostitutes, and one of them used to run a brothel and went to prison for it.
So you are friends with a woman that used to run a brothel?
Yes. And I don't have a problem with that. But the people that I think who really need the protection are not the girls necessarily who go into prostitution as a free choice or a sex worker, but it's the ones who are trafficked. And you're never going to stamp it out. It's a reality. We've got to accept it. It's the oldest profession in the world. You are not... It is a given. We are not going to stop it. I mean, for example, if we legalise drugs, which we were talking about the other day, you would actually stop the need of a lot of women because they go into prostitution to pay their drug habit. So it goes all back to... But I think we need to legalise it because I think it would give more women more protection. I'm not saying it's a perfect option.
Christine, you mentioned some of the debates we've had about drugs over the last few days. I'd never thought this would happen, but every time I look at you in the future, I'm going to think about drugs and brothels. I don't know how that happened. Rebecca, I'm coming to the other Rebecca now. You have an altogether different story to tell, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I entered prostitution when I was 14, and I only did indoor prostitution, which is...
That's child abuse rather than... I mean, prostitution.
Yeah, but I went on until I was 27, so...
Okay.
I mean, and most prostitutes that enter as underage tend to continue until they're adults.
How do you feel when you hear, or indeed when you see people like Helen, effectively portraying it as a lifestyle choice, and indeed, in some cases, quite a glamorous one?
Well, I think that's easy. I think that I would have said the same when I was in prostitution, because I think it's a way of blocking out all the bad things that happen to you as a survival mechanism. So I don't think we should ever condemn people for saying that. I think we should condemn the people that are selling it and condemn the people that are demanding it.
Did you have a pimp controlling your business?
No.
Who forced you to...
Hang on, just in a second. I'm going to come to Ava Vidal now, because Ava, you've also... we're all going to get plenty of chances. Someone must have forced you into it at 14.
You've
seen the other side of prostitution as well. You've seen a seamier side of it. Tell me about that.
Well, I just saw women who came into the prison where I worked who didn't have nicer stories to tell. I just think it's what Christine says. I think you have to make a distinction. I don't think it's helpful to say that sex work, which I'd rather say sex work than prostitute, because prostitute's quite a horrible word. But, I mean, it's got a lot of stigma attached to it.
What do you call yourself, Laura?
A sex worker stroke dominatrix.
A sex worker stroke dominatrix. It's quite a long business card.
Yeah.
Helen, how do you describe yourself?
Well, I don't anymore because I don't do it for a start.
Of course, but when you were in...
I would have said I was an escort, and I think there is... it all boils down to the same thing, you're selling your body, but
Yes.
I think there's different ways, and what drives me mad is when people think that you stood on a street corner funding some crack habit.
So
That is
these are the
absolute
people that
rubbish.
you ended up seeing when you were a prison
hang on a
guard.
minute,
You
let's
didn't
be
end up
honest,
seeing people like Helen. I'll be with you in a second. I just
Not
wanna-
only them, people like Christine's friend as
Yes.
well. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of call for there to switch to the Nordic model, which is a sort of Scandinavian. It's in place in Sweden, where they criminalise the person who's buying the sex as opposed to a sex worker. And a lot of people are calling for that. But I think in any sort of thing like this, you have to listen to the people who actually work there. And sex workers don't actually want that because it actually makes it quite difficult. And in Sweden, they say there's been like a great improvement. But when Sweden brought that law in was also at the same time that the internet came out. So things were naturally changing anyway.
Indeed. It sounds like a white flag, White D, doesn't it? It's like an admission that we can't keep a lid on it. It's always going to happen. So forget about morals, forget about religion, forget about whatever it might be that turns people against prostitution, and just concentrate on looking after the people that are doing it.
I mean, you know, it's one of those... It's like I see both sides. I've got a friend who does prostitution basically to fund her drug lifestyle, but I've also got someone who does the escort side of it because it is good money.
Sex is part of life and everybody should have it.
What he's never had, he wouldn't have missed.